We continue our Unbreakable series. And what we are doing is we're looking at how do we build a stable life in a broken world. We live in a world that is constantly broken. How is it that we pour our time and our energy and our efforts into things that we know that will have lasting value on this planet and beyond this planet? How is it that we can pour our efforts and our energy into things that we know that means something? The last thing I said last week that any of us want to do is pour our efforts and our life into things that end up breaking, and we feel like we just wasted parts of our lives. That we just kind of spent time during that period of our life, but it meant nothing. The things we did meant nothing. None of us want to have that as a story of our lives. So throughout this series, what we're looking at and what we're talking about is how do we build a stable life and what things can we pursue that would help us actually accomplish that goal of building something stable. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to look at where do you search to find control. Last week, we talked about where do you search to find satisfaction in your life. Today, we're going to look at where do you search to find control in your life. If you look at any of our lives, there are all sorts of things that we pursue in an attempt to try to control our environment or control the future of what's coming, that we look around and we go, we think these things will help us gain some degree of control in our lives. These are some of the things. Maybe you can relate to them. I'm sure you can relate to quite a few of them. But let me just run through these. One is investments or retirement savings. How many of you have investments or 401ks or some type of retirement, okay? The reason we do that, honestly, we're hoping to control the future. We're hoping to plan for a future where we have some control over it and we have some money set aside that we can control that future with. Alarm systems or personal protection. I'm not going to ask you who's carrying a gun, but how many of you have an alarm system at home or carry a gun? I don't know which is which. I'm assuming it's all alarms so that we don't know who has, okay? Most of us have those, and the reasons we have one or the other is this. We want to gain at least a degree, we feel, of control over the environment that we're in. We want to provide ourselves some type of safety. Insurance. We've got all sorts of insurances that we get. We have health insurance, home insurance, car insurance, life insurance. We have all sorts of insurances to ensure that we can control future events. So if something bad happens, the world breaks around us, we're taken care of, and we have insurance to make sure we're taken care of. We feel like we have control thing. Some people stockpile supplies for when basically everything hits the fan. So when everything hits the fan, they will be taken care of. They have food, they have resources, they have all that type of stuff. They're taken care of at that point, and they can control the scenario. Some of you, it's all about healthy eating and working out. You want to be able to control your body. You want to feel like you're healthy so you can live a long, healthy life. You want to work out so you're in good shape and you can do all the things in life you want to enjoy. And we do those, if you think about the core reason, we do those things really to try to control the future, to control having health issues come up or things like that. We want to control the scenario. A couple more on there, setting and working towards goals. We set and we work towards goals. Why? Because we think we're actually controlling things. We can set out something here and go, I want to get this, I want to acquire that, so I'm going to set up a goal now to get there. In our family, what we do is when we want to travel, so I don't do this well, but my wife does, and she constantly pesters me about it, so that I make it seem like I care, but she sets out goals. This is where we want to go, we want to visit, so then we start months and months and months, probably a year ahead, planning and looking for things and looking for cheap prices and things like that. And all the hope of controlling the future, we can get to where we want to get. So we make goals and we plan for them and we work towards them. Another one, if you have kids, you have plans and you have goals for your kids. Do you not? If you have children, you sit there and you go, I hope my kid turns out this way. I hope this is what they achieve. I'm going to direct them this way or steer them that way to help them to get to where I would like them to see them end up. And we set goals for them and we have plans for our children, what we hope they achieve. And the reason we do all that is this. We all deeply desire to feel as if we can gain some control over the chaotic world that we live in on a daily basis. And here's the thing. The world is always willing to offer you different types of fables to convince you that you can gain some control over this chaotic world. But here's what I want you to know. Everything's just a fable. Everything's really just an illusion. They don't really provide us any true control over our lives or over the future in any real, tangible way. They're just illusions. And what you will find is, if you start asking other questions, these things don't really offer you control. So let me do this. Just give you some examples of what I mean. When you have a kid that's 13 years old and they're not in your presence anymore and they leave your house and they're off with their friends, do any of these things up on the screen actually provide you any type of control over that scenario? No. You have none. They're a 13-year-old. They're going to do what they want to do. We realize as parents, when they get 12, 13 years old, your kids can really do what they want to do. They just don't know that. And so if you're teenagers, don't listen to this part, okay? We know it. You might not fully know it yet, but we understand as parents, we literally have no control over you at that point, except for the hope that you respect us enough to do what we ask you to do. And that's where we gain some control. But we really don't have control when you leave and you're 13 and you're out the door. That's on you. And we hope we do, but we really don't. When you're in the middle of a heart attack, do any of these things provide you any type of control? No. When you hear you have the secret C word, cancer, do any of these things up on the screen give you any type of control? No. They're just illusions. Will any of these things up on the screen give you any type of control of if your company stays in business or goes bankrupt and shuts down and you lose your job? Does anything up there make sure you can control that? No, it doesn't. When someone decides to start shooting at a gas station at your gas in your car up, does anything up there provide you any type of control over that scenario? Some of you go, yeah, I got my gun on me. Let's be honest. In a situation like that, no, usually it doesn't. You might get lucky and it might provide you something, but in general, no, it doesn't. It doesn't provide you any control. Do any of these things provide you control over the economy or the stock market from tanking and preventing them from tanking? No, you don't. In fact, if you put your investments and stuff into some of that, even when the stock market does collapse and goes down, you lose all of your money that you thought was going to control the future. And then that's where you get people that start to panic because I thought I controlled everything and now I realize I don't. Do any of these things provide control over you when you're driving on the road and the car in the opposite lane crosses over the center median line and hits you? Does it do anything for you? None of these things offer you control. We all desire deeply to feel as if we have control over the chaotic world around us. And the world is more than willing to sell you fables and give you things and say, yeah, if you just pursue these things, it will give you control. But what you have to understand is none of them actually do. None of them really give you any type of true control. There's only one source in this entire world that we ever can go to that can provide any type of control for our lives. And that one thing is simply this: prayer. Prayer. As Christians, we know this. Prayer is the only thing that offers us any type of control in this life. So if you want to find a stable place that you can actually feel like you have a sense of control over the things of this life, then the only place you have to run to is prayer and in communion with God and having and forming a relationship with Him on a regular basis. So here's what I want to do this morning is I just want to explain that to you. I want to explain how it is that prayer offers us a degree of control well beyond anything this world will ever offer us. And I'm going to give you 3 ways that prayer actually provides you control in your life, that actually provides you some comfort that you feel like, okay, I got a handle on these things. So let me explain how prayer does that. First, there is true power in prayer. And the first thing I want you to understand, true power in prayer. Think about this logically. Simply what prayer is this: it's an avenue that God provides you to actually communicate with the creator of the universe. That's what prayer is. Prayer is God says, I'm gracious enough and I love you enough, I'm going to actually listen to you and hear your concerns, your heartbeat, the things on your mind. I'm going to listen to you and possibly, if it's within my will and my desires, even act on it. If it's something that brings glory to me, even act on it and respond to your prayers. That's what prayer is. Prayer gives you the opportunity to talk to the creator of the universe who controls everything and go, I can have a direct dialogue with you. Is that not amazing? Okay, let me just ask you this real quick. What's better, preparing for your future by investing in the stock market and all that, or developing a prayer life where you talk to the controller of the universe? It's prayer life, okay? There's nothing wrong with investing. There's nothing wrong with those first things I showed you. There's nothing wrong with those things unless you are pursuing those things thinking somehow they magically let you control your future. They don't. The only thing that you can find true power of controlling the future is through a relationship with God, through your prayer life. The way we always describe it here, and you've heard this before, it's the big picture versus the little picture thing. Is you could say, if this entire building right here is the world and what's going on in the world, and we are this microphone, we can see this microphone, and this is our entire perspective of everything. God's perspective is everything happening in here. Our perspective is this. When we rely to go through this world and to build on the future and try to control things without ever talking to the one who can see everything else, do we really have any ability to control anything? No. I've always said it this way, is if you look at Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 through 6, it says this way. It says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Here's the power of prayer. God sees a big perspective, and we see the little one. When we pray to him, God's able to go, I can see all the different scenarios that might be coming your way, and I can show you exactly what path, what decision to make to avoid some of this stuff. That's what the power of prayer does. It lets the Creator go, let me talk to you, let me tell you how to avoid some of these things that you've expressed in your concerns you don't want to deal with and that you're scared of. Let me direct your path so you can avoid it. The other option is we do it on our own and we just randomly go by whatever choices we want to make and go, I can't see any big picture, but I'm just going to go here. I much prefer going, I rely on the power of God for God to go, direct me, Father. Direct me where to go. Direct my path so I can avoid these issues in my life. There is true power in prayer. The second thing that prayer does that gives us control is this, is it's available and God is always present. The availability of prayer, it is always there. No matter if people around you are not, no matter what situations you're in, even if you go to Rome's, when they're down there in a cavern where it's collapsed and they're in the dark, is God there? Is your cell phone? Are your investments? Is your house? Is your insurance company? No, it's not the Allstate. It's the Allstate that says like you can just like call in the Allstate guy and he pops into there and he's in the hole with you and he can pop you out back into the office. That doesn't happen in real life. That's just TV, okay? Real life is this. The only thing we can count on that we know is stable in our lives, that's always there for us, is God. He's always willing to listen. He's always to lend his ear to you, and he's always willing to hear what you have to say and respond if it's within his will. Proverbs 15:3, it says this, the Lord is watching everywhere. Okay? God is not more here in this building than he is when you leave this building. God is not more here in this building than he is when you're at home doing whatever you do at home, or you're at work, or you're at school, or wherever you are. God is just as much there as he is here this morning. God is everywhere. He sees everything. He knows everything. But if you only pray when you're in trouble, you're in trouble. Okay? If you only pray when you're in trouble, you're in trouble. Why I say that is this. A lot of people don't even know how to really pray. They think they pray and all they ever do is beg. All they're ever doing is begging God. Most people's prayer lives are basically this. I ignore God most of the time until there's things I want or I hit a crisis. And then they go, who do I go talk to? God. When I feel like I've lost control, then I will go to God and go, God, I'm begging you, help me out here. I'm begging you to do this for me. Most people, when they talk about prayer, aren't talking about prayer. They're talking about begging. It's a difference between having a relationship with God and seeing God as a Santa Claus. When you have a relationship with God, you are talking to him regularly. You're having conversations with him on a daily basis. You have a regular understanding of things that are happening in your life constantly with him. Santa Claus, we think about one time a year, right? Santa Claus is one of those things that comes up one time a year, and we remember Christmas is coming, so then we start asking Santa for things. And a lot of people think prayer is Santa Claus, which is when I need something, then I remember he's there, and then I go talk to him. And I go beg him and plead with him to give me what I want. And they think that's prayer. And then when God doesn't answer the way they want, they go, there is no power in prayer, and God doesn't really respond. And you're going, no, there's a ton of power in prayer, but you have to have a relationship with the Father. It's not about just going and begging him and every once in a while popping into his life and go, hey, I need this right now. Or, hey, I'm in a crisis. I know I don't have control. I need you to help me out. That's not what he calls us to do. He calls us to have a relationship, and when we find control is when we build that relationship. Psalms 46:1, it says this: God is our refuge and our strength. What it's saying is this: God, for Christians, for followers of Jesus Christ, God is our stable place. God is our foundation. God is our rock. It describes it here as God is our refuge and he is our strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. And the reason for that is that happens when you have a constant relationship through prayer with God. Then he becomes your refuge. He becomes your strength. He becomes the foundation that everything else is built on in your life. He becomes the thing that allows you to have some degree of control in your life and be at peace, which brings us to the third place and the third thing that prayer does, and it's this: we find comfort in prayer because we learn God's power and his availability. The third thing that prayer does, that scriptures are very clear on, is this: is we learn to find comfort in our relationship with God. The reason we learn that is this: in our prayer lives, we see on a regular basis God is active, he is alive in our daily lives. If the only time you pray to God is in crisis, or if you rarely pray to him and it's just something you remember every once in a while, you will be convinced God is not alive. You'll be convinced God is not active. You'll be convinced that God's not around. Let me tell you why. It's through a prayer life with God on a regular basis that you can see direct prayers that you're praying being answered. And when you see them being answered, who do you give credit to? God, right, Christians? Those of you that have an active prayer life, you see this all the time. I'm constantly in dialogue with God through prayer. I am constantly seeing God working around me. And the reason I notice he's working around me is because I've talked to him about these things and I see these things happening. And you sit back and there's this comfort about you that goes, God's in control. God knows what he's doing and God's here. God's overseeing things. Okay? The other side of the picture over here is this: you rarely pray, or you only pray by begging when you're in crisis mode. And what happens there is this: you have no clue that God's alive, that God's active, and God's doing anything in this world because you have nothing to base it on. So when God is acting in your life and doing things, you've never talked to him, so you have no linkage to go, that's God or not. You just see it all as the world functioning. You just see it all as that's just how life is. As Christians who have an active prayer life with God, we never see things that way. We see everything. We can see the fingerprints of God literally on everything. Let me just ask you real quick, those of you that are Christians that have an active prayer life with God, that's more than, I say, a token prayer every other day or something, but you have an active prayer life with God. How many of you can see the fingerprints of God on your daily lives? Hold on. Okay. That's a ton of you in this room. That's what prayer does. It brings you comfort because you understand God is there. When you feel totally out of control and when you don't have any comfort in your life is when you can't recognize if God's around. And we've probably all been there before where we ask this question, God, where are you? Or we've gotten angry with God because we prayed a prayer and we asked God and we begged God for something and it didn't come through the way we wanted it to. And then our assumption is this: God's not alive. God's not there. And I'm going, it's just because you don't recognize it, because he doesn't recognize you and you don't recognize him because you have no relationship with him. He's just your Santa Claus. You don't know Santa Claus. You just hope he brings you presents. That's the significance of prayer. It brings you comfort because you know the Father. 1 Peter 5:7, it says this: give all of your worries and your cares to God. It says, for he cares about you. Okay? So as Christians, he's imploring you, give all of your cares and worries, all of your concerns, all the things that you feel are out of your control. Give those to God. Hand them up to God and go, God, these are in your hands now. God, I offer you this. And it says the reason you do that is because you know that God cares for you. God will listen. Hebrews 4:16 says this: so let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive his mercy, and we will find grace to help us when we need it the most. So here it tells us, come boldly before the Father. How do you become bold before the Father? You become bold when you know him. Okay? Someone I don't know real well, I'm hesitant to talk to. to be honest with you. We're all that way. If I don't know someone real well, I'm trying to figure them out and I'm hesitant. If I know someone that's been my best friend, and I know my wife or whatever else, I can be very bold because I know I can just go say what I need to say and I can go talk to them. If I have a concern, I can go talk to them because there's someone I've known for a long time and built a relationship over a long period of time. I have confidence. I have boldness in that relationship. And that's what this scripture is saying, is let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There, it says, we will find mercy, we will find grace when we need it the most in our lives. All right? This morning, here's what I want to implore you with, is this. Is stop seeking control by chasing all the fables of this world. Stop pouring all of your energy and efforts into thinking this world has the answers to provide a stable place of control for your lives. And instead, spend your time building a relationship with the one who controls the entire universe through your prayer life. Make a switch in what you are pursuing. If you look at the list I've had up there at the beginning and you look at your prayer life on a weekly basis, which do you pour more time into? The things that were up on that screen at the beginning or prayer? Okay. That's the question you have to answer. If it's not prayer, you're seeking control from a world who's just feeding you an illusion. That's feeding you fables and make you think you have control when you really don't. You can only find it through prayer. Now, here's the other thing. There's probably some of you sitting here this morning, and I know this is what's going on in your head. I stink at praying. So you look at me as a minister and you go, that guy gets his prayers done because God listens to him because he knows how to pray. He's good. I know it's what you're all thinking is you're like, he's the godliest man I've ever seen. He's so wise. He's intelligent. He can speak all the old ancient Greek names and the German and Roman names, Sunday school class. He can get those all perfect. I know what you're thinking. I get all my prayers answered all the time because I'm good at prayer. I'm not a loser though, James. And you're thinking, because I talk to you guys, I see Christians all the time, you're thinking, I'm just not real good with my words. I'm not real good with my prayer. So I don't know if my prayers are really going to be active. I don't know if they're going to be powerful because I don't know if I'm saying the right things. Here's what I want you to remember and I want to encourage you with, is our prayers may be awkward, okay? The prayers that we say may be absolutely pathetic when we look at them and go, that was just the worst prayer I've ever seen. But since the power of prayer is in the one who hears it, not in the one who says it, our prayers have incredible power, okay? Understand the power of prayer is in God, not in you. It's not some magical gift he gives you where now you wield power and can walk around. The power of prayer comes from the Father. So it's not about how smooth you are in saying the things you need to say. It's all about your heart and how you speak to God and how regularly you speak to God. That's what it relies on. You're just relying on God's power. Thank God we don't rely on our wording because a lot of us would be like, this is terrible, including myself. The power of prayer is in God, not in how well you say it. Here's what Philippians 4, 6, and 7 says. It says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank him for all he has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard our hearts and our minds as you live in Christ Jesus. This morning, church, if you want to find a stable place to find control in your life, search out God and build a relationship with him through prayer. Don't spend all of your efforts thinking insurance, thinking all these different things up on the screen are going to provide you control. The only one that truly can is God, your Father. And the way he gives us to have a relationship with him is through our prayer life. So develop that. And when you do, you will start to understand you actually do have control over what's happening around you. And you will find comfort because you know God's in control of all of it. Would you pray with me?